And with that, we turn to the analysis of Shields and Brooks. That is syndicated columnist Mark Shields and New York Times columnist David Brooks. Gentlemen, hello. So you've listened to the conversation with Congresswoman Gabbard. David, to you first, how much of a role is foreign policy going to play in this election?
Well, at the moment, I don't think a primary role. I was a foreign correspondent in the early 90s, covering sort of Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. And I remember when the Clinton campaign started, suddenly all my stories about these foreign policy issues disappeared off the American consciousness. Because when Clinton came in, people said something is happening right here. And right now, the focus of voters' attention is the crisis right here. And so I think that's the way it is. It could change with one foreign policy crisis. It could all change. But right now, there's a pretty domestically focused nation.
So for Congresswoman Gabbard, I mean, Mark, as you heard her say, she's very focused on what does the U.S. do, what's its role in the world, mistakes have been made. Is that a way to capture voters' imagination?
Well, I mean, it is, if in fact David is right, and an issue or crisis does develop, and I think we can see crises brewing at this point. I mean, George H.W. Bush, I think it's fair to say, in 1988, his foreign policy credentials, his own military experience were strong credentials in his election, John Kerry's nomination in 2004, and Barack Obama. Being the only Democratic candidate who would oppose the United States war in Iraq, that was his calling card. That was his credential. So, I mean, if in fact it's there, it becomes central. If it isn't, it wasn't in 1992.
So a lot of, just quickly, Dave, a lot of comment right now about how the president has handled North Korea, Venezuela, Iran. Do we see that being a plus or a minus for the president?
Well, I'd say the big minus is the way he's frayed all our alliances, which makes all those issues harder. Mm-hmm. But his general posture is one of sometimes extreme bellicosity with no convincing idea that he's actually going to do anything about these things. And so I think we're not very close to a war in Iran. I think he's loath to do that. He'd be crazy to do that. Right. But he is responding to a situation, which is a tough situation. If the intelligence reports are true that the Iranians told their militant armies that they sort of control in the region to target Americans, then that's something any American president is going to respond to. I'm not sure you can respond as well when you have no allies, or you can respond as well as when you've already walked out of the Iran deal. You've sort of left yourself in a hard place. And the thing that worries me is the administration seems to think Iran is on the verge of folding, and that if they just up the pressure and get a little more erratic, then Iran will fold. Most experts I know do not think they're that close to folding, and we could be in a situation where things spiral.
Mark, let's turn to a domestic issue that a lot of people are talking about right now, and that is the anti-abortion movement moving essentially state after state in the last few weeks and months to impose even stricter limits on abortion. In the case of Alabama, the strictest limits in the country, basically saying all abortions are illegal. Doctors could go to prison. What do you see is going on here? I mean, what does this movement say to you? And do you think one political party or another, I mean, obviously it's a serious issue, but setting the issue itself aside, does one political party or another stand to lose from this?
Yes. I would say that, first of all, the issue itself is thorny and unresolved in the country, and remains so after some 45 years, unlike the country's moved considerably to the left, liberal position on gay rights, on same-sex marriage. Abortion has been stuck. The Gallup poll has asked the same question annually. Do you consider yourself pro-choice or pro-life? The most recent, 48% of Americans consider pro-life, 48% consider pro-choice. But Lydia Saad of Gallup writes, and I think she's right, there is a consensus on this thorny, difficult issue on three aspects. In the life of the mother, should abortion be available, right, and optional in case of the life of the mother? And 71% of those who identify as pro-life say it should be, so 7 out of 10. And the same thing, by simple majority, is not quite that high on the question of pregnancy as a result of rape or incest. So I would say, in answer to your question, Judy, that politically this is I don't want to say a suicide pact for Republicans. Republicans are very much on the defensive, and it will put them in a position where all those Democratic House seats that were won in 2018 in places like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, got a lot tougher for uphill for Republicans to win back.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, New York started this by passing a very liberal
That's right.
abortion law, which went all the way through the pregnancy.
Right.
Virginia, there was one that was proposed that didn't end up going anywhere. And so the polling data I look at has three positions. One, do you think abortion should always be legal? And you get like 27%.
Yep.
Should never be legal, 18%. Should be legal, which the European
Sometimes.
solution, which is just legal first trimester, harder the second, 50%. And that 50 or 55%, has, as Mark says, has been very stable since Roe v. Wade. But the problem is we took it out of politics, so it couldn't get to the moderate position. Now the extremists have taken over both sides, and everybody's speaking for these extreme positions.
But
in the
right now,
Alabama.
but I was just going to say, right now, it's the restrictive side that is having success
ascendant.
in legislature after legislature.
Yeah.
Right. Well, in the red states. Yeah.
Right.
I think David, both in Virginia and New York, the Democrats were seen unfavorably and unfortunately and I think wrong as a party of infanticide. I mean, they really were. I mean, Ralph Northam, that's what got him into
The
initial
proposal
trouble.
that was put forward and
That's exactly right. But
withdrawn.
now I think there's no question that it's the Republican dominant position. That's why Kevin McCarthy, the Republican House leader, has tried to distance himself. He realizes this is a killer in suburban America.
Right.
And America remains pro-choice
Like
and
what the
anti-abortion.
NRA did to the gun issue, these people are doing to
That's
the
right.
abortion issue.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked to Congresswoman Gabbard before, but I want to come back to 2020. We did have a couple of new people jump into the race again this week, including the mayor of New York. We now have 23 Democrats, and maybe I'm forgetting somebody.
David's about to announce.
I did, David, you're right.
With Mark as my running mate.
Mark, right
Yeah,
on.
that's right. Balance ticket.
But for all the numbers in there, the polls are showing, and granted they're early, Joe Biden is pulling away. We looked at a new Fox News poll that came out last night or today, and it shows when you ask candidates who can beat President Trump, Joe Biden is way out there, 49 to 38, and you can see these other numbers: Bernie Sanders, 46 to 41.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems to be the who can beat Trump that is the question. And there's another poll people were asked: who can top qualities for the Democratic nominee can beat Trump to 73%. Beating every other quality that matters to people. What does
Right,
that
and
say
it struck
to
me
us?
on that poll that new ideas was down at 47. We don't need new ideas. We just want to be Trump.
No.
And so for a lot of voters,
That's a new idea.
Yeah, that isn't, like Trump has been a daily nightmare, a daily horror show. They just want him to go away for the sake of the country. And so Biden seems like the most stable who can do that. The thing that strikes me about the polling data is how the Democratic Party, how the Democratic voters break down. There's no divide on gender lines, which is surprising because we have all these women voting. There's no divide on race lines. There's no divide on economic lines, education lines. Those divides don't matter. Age matters. So Biden does extremely well among voters over 45, moderately well among middle-aged voters, and not so well at all among younger voters.
Right.
And so that age divide is the younger voters who want systemic change, and the older voters who don't want the party to get too far left and who want some stability and restraint.
Judy, I hate to rain on anybody's parade. At this
Go
point,
ahead.
At this point, Judy, in the 1992, when there was an open seat for the Democratic presidential nomination, Bill Clinton was at 6% and running in 5th place. At this point, in 2004, Joe Lieberman was leading.
I realize
so
there's
these-
a danger in bringing up polls.
Yeah,
this
no, but
early.
the thing that I would be concerned about is if I were Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump is consistently at what, 40, 41% in those polls. I mean, you know, if the Democrats nominate someone who is under indictment, detox, or suspicion of dealing with the foreign dynasties, I mean, they're almost in a position of strength.
But the generational thing will last, because we saw that with Bernie against Hillary, that there is a generational divide on the left these days. You see it in your workplace, you see it everywhere.
Yeah.
And so somehow there will be an old person candidate and a young person candidate, and we don't know who that'll be, but that divide is a permanent feature right now of the Democratic Party.
I'm not so sure, but I mean, I would.
About, you're not so sure about the
I'm not.
generational?
I'm sure about the division. I'm not sure that each side will have a candidate. I think that's what I mean.
Yeah. It should be said 60% of voters are over 45. There are a lot more older voters.
That's right.
But is there a message though that's coming through to the younger generation? I mean, I'm not sure what the cutoff point is, whether it's 30 or 35, as we said. But is one of these or more of these candidates making an open appeal to young people? I mean,
Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, and Warren's had a very good week.
Yeah.
If
and
you
Bernie
look-
Sanders is you
And
know, in his 70s.
It's a
as Joe
higher
Biden.
level. Yeah, it doesn't matter what age the candidate is.
Yeah.
It's the emotional tone, the message of anger and fed upness. The systems have failed us. That's the Warren-Sanders message, and that's what seems to appeal to 35, as it did with the Bernie Bros all along.
Anybody who watched Bernie Sanders in 2016 was just over impressed. I mean, I was, by the youth of his audience. I mean, it was a young, in many cases idealistic, passionate, but also scornful of the political establishment. I mean, so I mean, I think that's a truth of our politics right now.
Including the candidate we talked to tonight. I mean, she was a huge Bernie supporter
Yes.
in 2016. As we said, she's the second youngest. She's Pete Buttigieg is 37. She's 38. But I guess my question is, are we going to see just a sort of a naked appeal to young people, or are we, where, David, you're saying we're already seeing it. We're seeing it in Bernie's message and Bernie Sanders' message, and in
Youth is idealism. Youth is not a time, a calendar. It's a frame of mind. It's a state of mind. It's a perspective on the world of what's possible. I mean, I think that's what the themes you'll be hearing, rather than just oh boy, you and I have the same birthday and we like the same
Weirdly
music.
angrier though. It's like in '68. I don't know, Gene McCarthy. I don't know if he was playing to idealism or anger. This is Iraq. We've lived through Iraq. We've lived through the financial crisis. We've lived through Trump. This is not working for us. And so it's an impatience. And the older voters are, no, let's have some steadiness. Let's continue what we were doing under the Obama era.
But in a way, it says that Joe Biden is the one who can expect some arrows, slings and arrows coming his way.
Absolutely.
All right, David Brooks, Mark Shields, thank you.
Thank you, Judy.